Hi everyone. What Dennis was finishing up there, that showing of Tony the movie is actually at my building. That will be my 60th birthday party. Will be a screening of Tony the movie in our community room at the Meridian. So following this COC meeting next month, we will have a reception. Valet parking is complimentary. You guys all come on down. There could be no better present for myself and especially my husband to have us get closer to a functional shelter crisis response with same-day placement. So I can talk about something else at dinner. So the other thing that's happening next week is Wednesday night, we've got a reception at the University Club from 4 to 6 with a specialty developer from Los Angeles who will be talking about doing something like Wakeland did with East Village Community Church and combining residential on an underutilized parcel, and the maximization of our zoned and owned properties in this town, both public and private. We would get there. We would have what we need, and there are very, very easy and win-win-win ways to make that happen. So that's from 4 to 6 next Wednesday at the University Club. If you didn't receive an invitation, send me an email. You guys all know where to find me. But I would love to have somebody here from every office that has any property or interest in getting this handled. Thank you. And I gotta go. We gotta move in.
Mr. Stephen Russell.
Well, good afternoon. I know some of the faces around the table, but not everyone. My name is Stephen Russell. I'm the Executive Director of the San Diego Housing Federation, and our mission is to provide more affordable housing for folks, especially low-wage working families, seniors, the disabled, veterans, and permanent supportive housing for the homeless. I'm here today partly just to introduce myself because I've been hearing a lot of conversations about how my members, my 130 organization members, including one of the founding members, Ken Souter, have asked questions about what is the role of affordable housing in the homelessness question. Certainly a lot of my members are building permanent supportive housing. The Federation has also been leading some research, some polling to see about the viability of local revenue measures around affordable housing and homelessness. And for that reason, I wanted to introduce myself. I hear there have been discussions going on here, and I promise to be more present at future discussions here, and certainly make myself available to the members if they have questions, so we can participate in the solutions that are absolutely essential for homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And finally, the final on the public comment, Michael McConnell.
Excuse me. So once again, I usually come about once or twice a year to talk to you about the criminalization of homelessness, and this is particularly timely since the mayor has once again decided to launch a full-on attack against people who are experiencing homelessness in downtown San Diego. I've documented it pretty clearly. Anybody who wants to see it can visit Homelessness News San Diego, where I've posted quite a few videos. This body is supposed to implement a plan to fight the criminalization of homelessness. That's why I always come up and talk to you about it and just let you know that you've once again failed to do that. I will be working on a formal complaint to HUD once again because of your failure to actually tackle this issue. The reason this is so important is this isn't anything new. This has been the mayor's primary tactic to deal or manage with homelessness, as he's really just not wanted to deal with real solutions and developing the political will to tackle it. So we really need to move forward with something a little bit more reasonable. We haven't seen this work month after month after month. I mean, I got to believe that all of us, not just this table, are getting tired of failure, are getting tired of not implementing something that actually helps people who are on our streets. And if this isn't the worst timing to be launching a full-on attack on these encampments, which are very problematic. We all know encampments are problematic to the whole community. But the county jail is the most expensive shelter in San Diego County, about $158 a day. 26% of people in county jail, according to the Sheriff's Department, are homeless. You can do the math. It's not hard. Most of those folks are getting arrested for failing to pay encroachment and illegal lodging tickets. They don't just go out with police cars anymore. They actually are arresting so many people, they bring a van to load people into.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. I'll be talking a bit later too, so.
I got your request. Okay, thank you. that concludes the public testimony. We'll move on to the consent calendars. We've got a couple of items on the consent calendar. Item 3A is approval of the minutes of July 20th and August 17th. And 3B is the financial report of June and July 2017 financial statements. Is there any request to pull on either of those items? None on the board? Okay. Is there any request? I didn't have any requests from the public. So a motion to approve on the consent.
So move.
Those items. Thank you, Nick. Second. John, thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Hearing none, I'll deem that to be unanimously approved, and we'll move on then to item number 4, Executive Officer and CEO updates. I'm going to start, first of all, I guess I'll share with you that Councilmember Ward and Rick Gentry and I did an op-ed piece on SB 2 and SB 3 to trying to garner support at the state level. Pleased to inform you that those are on the governor's desk now. Shows you what power we have. I mean, it just rolled right through. But with all kidding aside, that could put billions of dollars in California for affordable housing, and I think that's extremely important. It looks likely to happen, and we're smiling a little bit about that and hope that those will soon be signed. I would also share with you that the county is one step closer to actually activating the $25 million Innovative Housing Trust Fund that I introduced 3 months ago. On September 4th, the Board of Supervisors voted unanimously on the ordinance language that actually sets the money aside in a fund and allows us to set up the guidelines then for how that money is going to be released in the community, who can qualify for it, how we expect that it will be used. So for those of you who might have an interest, stay tuned. And then lastly, on September 1st, our county public health officer declared a local health emergency because of the Hep A epidemic that is going on. Later, you're going to hear more about this later. Dr. Sayon, I say Sayon because I know I can't get his last name. All those syllables in there. But he's spoken to us before, and he's going to be giving us another update. You're also going to hear from the city of San Diego on some of the things that are going on in the city, and they're substantial. So, Mr. Vice Chair, do you have any comments you want to make at this time?
I'll stay for 6A.
Okay. Where's our secretary?
Nothing from me.
Oh, here you are. You're usually over
I
here.
usually, but you know, I go where I'm told.
Oh, okay.
That's my name tag.
I got to keep track of you. Deacon Jim, do you have anything, or is that treasurer?
Just one, and the councilman may be discussing this later. Just the fact you probably have heard at this point in time that we're going to be deploying 3 large tents on 3 different locations. One will be serviced by Alpha Project, another by VVSD, and then we have Father Joe's Villages will have one on our site. We're excited about that. We're having meetings on a daily basis on all the logistics, and as you can imagine, there's a lot of planning that's going into this. We hope to have them up by December, and that in itself is a very aggressive plan. It would be great. I'd love to have them up just before Thanksgiving, actually, but that's even overly aggressive, but I tend to do that. But we are excited about it. The combination of the 3 tents will probably bring in and off the streets about 700 individuals, thereabouts, give or take. Some tents will be larger than others, and including families as well. So we're targeting families. Also, particularly we're targeting families at Father Joe's Villages. We kind of divided who would do what, and so you'll hear more about it. You'll hear more from the press. You'll hear more from this body as well. We know it's not the solution, but we know because of the health crisis that we absolutely have to move people off the streets. We have to give them sanitary environment. It's extremely important, and this will do just that. And there's still many more on the street. The intention, and I won't speak for the city, but the intention will be to deploy some others, but at least we have these 3 that will be online sooner rather than later. And then, but it reinforces the fact that at the end of it all, what we need is housing, right? The crisis is a housing crisis, and we'll be focused on that as well. Our particular tent on our lot, Penske, we call it the Penske lot. The intention is to have that tent up only for a year, because that's the location, you may recall, where we hope to break ground in early 2019 to put up new construction having 448 units. And we're working very diligently in that regard. And so we'll have this tent up for about a year, and then take it down, and then move to the new construction. So anyway, just wanted to share that tip with you.
Good.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, and thank you. I know you've been working both the city and with the business community, and it's good to see that, there is some progress. And I think we all agree with you, that's not the final solution, but given the crisis that we're in right now, that it's better than just letting things coast. So, thank you. Okay, that completes then what will be item 4. We'll move on to item 5. These are the action items, and the first action item is approval of phase 1 of the community plan framework. And it's we're going to have a report by Greg Angel, who's chair of the community plan ad hoc committee. We had a report last month, I guess, and we were unable to take action, but we'd like to do that this month. And Greg, if you have some comments you want to get us started with.
Yeah, I'll keep it very brief. I gave a report last month highlighting the community plan. It's actually been summarized well by the preceding comments of this meeting. This is a housing crisis. We need housing. The community plan is about bringing together the resources we have to create the best homeless crisis response system that prioritizes housing for those who are the most vulnerable. This is phase 1. Presented it last month. Many of you have been a part of the ad hoc committee overseeing the work done by Focus Strategies. It is our plan, and we present it today for your approval. Phase 2 is already underway, and we'll provide the data to identify exactly how many more units and what else we need to get where we want to go as soon as possible.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, do you have a presentation of this?
We just need a vote.
Okay.
Just presented to this body for a vote. So we need, if there are any questions, I'm happy to address them. Otherwise, presented for a vote.
So I shared some concerns last month, and I wanted to know if those are being recorded in the official record, or do I need to re-present those concerns?
They were recorded in the minutes. The plan was not changed.
Okay. So I just want to say I'd like the plan moving forward to include those that are not funded by HUD, who may have different requirements upon entry. I'd like to see our SOBR programs be part of the program, or part of the plan for those coming out of recovery longer than 90 days. Don't qualify. I'd like us as a community, the community plan, to reflect not just the HUD funded or ESG funded programs that are housing first, that are what we've said in our community framework, what we want. But remember from last month, I said playground, not just the sandbox. That analogy, I'd like our moving forward to have a voice for other options besides the ones we fund.
My read of the plan is that it does include those, but if you don't feel that way, then others certainly don't as well. So I think we should make note, because it has to include everyone. Otherwise, there's no point in it.
Okay.
So I would ask if you could submit that in writing, or if it's in the minutes from the last meeting in a way that meets your satisfaction, and we can include that as an addendum to the plan that's being presented for approval today. Does that work for you?
I don't have a problem approving it. I just, as we move forward, I want them included in the thought process.
I agree 100%.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I think there'll be a way to do that.
I do too.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay?
I'll make a motion to move, and then I have a comment.
Okay.
Discussion.
Can we have a second first before your comment? down here. Ken? Okay.
So, great work, Greg, and just to support Major's point, though, looking at all interventions, housing person, second, third, fourth, fifth, but that they be evidence-based. And I know there's a lot of work into, that we're really driven by results, not some ideological approach, but it's results. And so I think many of us have a strong feeling towards Housing First and its efficacy, but there may be other interventions also. So I'm pleased that is, I think, that was reflective in the work, and I appreciate that consideration was put in.
I agree. Everything we do needs to be data-driven and not rhetoric-driven.
Thank you, Greg. Nancy?
Thank you. I also would like to reiterate the comment that I made at the last meeting, and that was, I think this is the place where we ought to be addressing the criminalization of homelessness, and it's not in this plan.
Okay. That can be done outside of the plan, too.
It just needs to be done. And as long as we're saying this is our community plan, I think that it ought to be addressed. I mean, in some way, shape, or form, it should be addressed.
We'll refer that to Greg, too.
I too would like to reiterate my statement from last month. There was language in the plan regarding performance-based contracting. And so I just want to make sure that we are mindful as we move forward that we are comparing programs that provide equal level of services to similar clientele, and that we're not, comparing apples to oranges. So, because that could negatively impact some of our programs.
Okay. Okay. John?
And I just want to make sure, as we message this plan to the community, that we explain that we're not just creating words on paper, but the next step, is my understanding at the last meeting, is that we're going to actually put resources behind it, because a plan without resources is just not going to work.
Great.
So we just need to make sure we message that.
Yeah, it isn't going to be just a plan. We're going to implement this, and as you know, this next phase calls for the implementation. We're working on what the scope of the work is, what's going to be handled by staff, what's going to be handled by consultants, and where that funding comes from. And I can tell you, both the vice chair and I have been beating the bushes to make sure that we ensure we have the funding to do what we need to do, and we're going to get there. Okay? Oops. Okay, Ray?
Yeah, it's my understanding that this is an organic plan, and this is something as we get new data and updated data that we'll be able to make modifications. So it seems like we'll be able to address many of these things as we learn more and we get deeper and richer data from hopefully some of these organizations that are participating in HMIS and those types of things. I think that's important to know.
Just to let you know, I am chair of the DAC as well, and we have been talking at length with Focus Strategies about making sure that the staff at the RTFH knows how to implement all the data structural changes or anything they might suggest to us, so that we can continue moving forward even after the plan may be finished or completed.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure that the plan, as we move forward, is inclusive of all regions throughout the county. Reading through the plan and the stakeholder interviews, it was a little concerning that no one was represented the South region. So as we move forward, I'd just like to make sure that all regions are included and the South is not forgotten.
Okay. I think I've exhausted all the hands that I've seen. We have a motion on the floor. We have a second on the floor. All of you in support of that, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, I'll deem that to be unanimously approved. We'll move on then to action item B, which is the approval of the 2017 HUD COC NOFA application. And Nancy, where are you? There you are. Nancy's going to give us a staff report.
I am going to give you an update. I have a set of a PowerPoint. Can everyone see that, even those? This is a report on the scoring subcommittee of the Evaluation Advisory Committee. Through my eyes and ears. Just by way of background, HUD creates a competition which requires that there is a local review and prioritization of projects before submittal to HUD. This isn't an arbitrary activity, it is a part of the funding process. The scoring subcommittee this year completed a local process following both local and national priorities. My purpose today is to report the results of San Diego COC's competitive process as previously directed. In summary, we had 21 applicants, aka agencies, apply for 53 competitive projects. We had 2 system projects, HMIS and a planning grant. Total requests were in excess of $21.7 million. Our requests exceeded available funds by roughly $2.5 million. So this year, I have to say, it was a very competitive competition. Let me remind everyone of the HUD funding structures because I know there are some new people at the table. HUD establishes a maximum amount for the COC application, the annual renewed demand, acronym ARD. It requires dividing funds into 2 tiers. The top tier, tier 1, is populated by the higher scoring projects and in some cases the automatically funded projects. And the tier 2 is more at risk for funding because it is handled with a more complicated review process within HUD. In other words, in tier 2, the projects are actually compared with similar projects all across the country. They also allow for applications for bonus funds. Bonus funding is a dollar amount, which is a percentage of the total ARD. And this year we had 3 applicants for bonus funds. And it allows a single application for planning funds, which we had. So prioritization and scoring. We score all the projects. We look at them against the board priorities for the 2017 competition. We look at HUD mandated rules. This year and in prior years, HUD requires us to put forward any project that has not had a 1-year renewal. In other words, projects we call less than 1 year must show up on the ranking list. We do use data to look at the period that these projects have been active. Some were only got started very late in the funding year because of it taking so long to get their contracting completed with HUD, etc. But we did use an evidence-based way of scoring part of their application. The COC system itself is important. We looked at all of the projects against the contribution to sub-regions in the county and also to the overall system's capability to move towards ending homelessness. And then we did look at the bonus projects. Our funding recommendations, we have recommended 50 projects for funding, totaling $19.3 million. What we did is we maximized the amounts of the annual renewal demand, what was available through HUD this year, and the planning grant dollars as allowed by the NOFA. 24 permanent supportive housing projects for $9.2 million, 14 rapid rehousing projects, $5.9 million, 6 TH rapid rehousing joint projects. As you recall from a couple of months ago when I came and did an update, this was a new opportunity for projects to reallocate out of only a TH or only a rapid rehousing project to a joint project, which we believe and which we thoroughly encourage the community to consider, really hits at some of the bottlenecks in the system and creates more flow through. So we had 6 new applicants come in for the THRRH at $1.6 million. We had 3 system projects that we funded for $1.9 million. In other words, the systems funds came packaged for the system. They were not, we didn't include them in looking at all the other projects. 2 transitional housing projects were funded for $300,000 and 1 safe haven project. There were 9 appeals in this cycle. 6 agencies filed 9 appeals. And these were handled by a wonderful group of people who were willing to give their time and stretch their brains around the appeal process. And I want to thank those of you who are in the room today. And the appeals in some instances the applicants were able to demonstrate that there were errors or misunderstandings in the data, and the scoring was changed. And in other parts of the appeals were not approved. Not included in this ranking of projects are 3 transitional housing projects that received less than 51% of the 200 available points and did not do any reallocation on their projects. And 2 new projects which met the threshold for being funded but ranked below. They had the 2 lowest scores in the new project category, and they ranked below the available funding for the new projects, including bonus funds. The next steps, which will be taking place pretty quickly, an electronic submittal of the 2017 COC application and priority project funding list will go out on September 26th. Upon conditional award by HUD, we will advise this board of the results, whether we received all the funding, what happened, who said what to whom, and the impact on the system. And at that point, we will recommend conducting a debriefing and feedback session on the scoring process itself and ways to improve that for next year. Thank you.
Okay, Nancy, thank you.
You're welcome.
I would say this is very time sensitive. That has to be submitted here shortly, in the coming week. And I think what's being requested of us is that the board receive the scoring committee report of the results, and also that we authorize the scoring committee and regional task force on homeless as a collaborative applicant to submit the 2017 COC application, all the required related documents. And with that, I don't have any speakers request on this.
I'd like to comment.
Go ahead.
I'd like to extend thanks and appreciation to Nancy and her committee. These are not simple things, adjudicating. So thank you very much, and also to Pat Leslie, who has been a stalwart help, and Dolores Diaz.
Hi, Dolores. She's waiting at the back.
She's been avoiding this meeting since I came, so. But they did a terrific job, and we actually have an appointment to push the button on Monday, so that we hope that this board will accept the work that's already queued up. Otherwise, we don't get any money.
Okay. A motion is probably appropriate unless somebody has any questions or concerns or corrections or Sue. Going to move the recommendations on this action. I'm looking for Nancy. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Speedy group here today. Okay.
Do providers need to abstain from this?
Sure. Does that leave anybody? Why don't we take the vote, and then all of you who abstained, I'll let you call out for the record who has abstained, okay? Okay, all in favor of the motion, all eligible to vote and in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Hearing nobody opposed, now abstainers?
I think I know who all the providers are, so I will make sure that all providers are abstaining.
Okay.
And the agency.
Got it.
Is that a legitimate vote?
Sure. There were 9 who abstained.
Okay.
9.
Okay. With that then, that completes item B. And Mr. Walker, you want to introduce item number C, 5C, approval of neighborhood reinvestment?
Item number C is the RTFH is planning on making an application for a neighborhood reinvestment program grant with the county, and that requires a specific authorization. There is a generalized authorization that has already been passed that the CEO has the authority and the ability to ask, but in this particular grant, we need a highly specific one. The only difference is that this grant is going directly to the county. And so, Mr. Chair, it would be hoped that this could be approved so that we could receive funding from the county.
Do I have to abstain? Probably. I gotta let the vice chair handle this hot potato here.
No problem, Mr. Chair. Okay, so thank you, Gordon, for that description. I think that this certainly is going to help us for both our community plan phase 2 efforts as well as the website enhancement. Of course, always grateful for the county for the efforts that it does through its neighborhood reinvestment programs at large. But at that time, I'd like to see, I know we have no public comment on this item. Are there any board member comments on this item? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the item. So moved by Peter Kallstrom, and because this is coming directly to the RTFH, I think it's appropriate. So seconded by Major Jessica.
Sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And with one abstention.
Two abstentions.
2 abstentions, including Ashley,
Probation.
and abstaining by probation seat.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Gordon, I'll keep an eye on that for you, sir. Okay.
We'll pass the paperwork quickly.
Thank you. Item 5D, this is a advocacy discussion. John Lemos, our counsel for the regional task force, is here. He's going to provide an overview on some of the rules and regulations that we need to adhere to as it relates to legislative activities and advocacy, and then Karen's going to follow up with a presentation on the action item for consideration. So, John, you want to start?
Thanks, Ron. Yes. I'm not sure that this is actually functional, so I'll just speak loudly.
Okay.
Yes, sir? Okay, great. So I'm John Lemo, those of you who haven't met me before. There was a question raised about what sort of advocacy can the RTFH do with regard to legislative activities and perhaps ballot measures, one or more ballot measures that might appear on the fall 2018 ballot. And for purposes of nonprofit corporations, ballot measure advocacy is pretty much the same as legislative lobbying. So I'm going to kind of give you the overview of what that means for nonprofit corporations. So as nonprofit corporations, you can certainly participate as a corporation, as an entity, in legislative advocacy, in promoting or opposing a ballot measure to certain financial extents based on the expenditures of the corporation. So you're tax exempt. The IRS is interested in knowing that you're operating in a tax exempt fashion and you're pursuing your charitable purposes, and you're not going beyond what they think is a substantial amount of your expenditures being used for political advocacy. As far as individual candidates, supporting, endorsing, opposing political candidates, that's a no-no for this organization completely. So to any advocacy that you do, promoting or opposing a ballot measure, or let's say a local or statewide or national legislative matter that might affect the mission of the organization, you want to make sure that any language you use, any statements that you make, do not align specifically with a particular candidate or office holder by name in particular. So the IRS has kind of 2 tests that it uses to determine whether or not your activities, political activities, are a substantial part of your business operation. The first test and the kind of the historic test that the IRS has always used is actually called the substantial part test. There's a bunch of IRS rulings that suggest that if roughly 5% or less of your expenditures are dedicated to legislative advocacy, political advocacy, that's probably not a substantial part of your business, and that's probably okay. There have been inquiries into that over the years. The IRS has looked at that for various organizations. It's very, very fact specific. So the IRS has created another test. It's called the expenditure test. The expenditure test is really designed for organizations that know they're going to do a good amount of advocacy, and they have maybe an advocacy staff that's dedicated to doing lobbying type activities. There's a form that you can fill out for the IRS. It's called Form H. And the idea there is if you tell the IRS what you're going to do, and it's up to roughly, depends on the annual revenue of the organization, if it's roughly 20% or less of your expenditures annually, you're going to be okay if you use the safe harbor expenditure test. The downside to that is there's a lot of paperwork involved, there's a lot of writing, there's a lot of disclosures, it becomes very campaign-like. So significantly at this stage, or in the coming months, assuming you want to go down the advocacy road with promoting or theoretically opposing a ballot measure, you might want to think about kind of the range of the organization's expenditures that you want to dedicate to this activity. If we're talking 5% or less, it's probably not worth the trouble of going through the disclosures and the Form H and the expenditures. If it's more than that, if you think you're going to be doing a lot of advocacy, we would consider doing the Form H and filing that annually. I checked the most recent 990 that I had for the organization, which is from for your fiscal year ending June of 2015. Had you filed a Form H at that time, the maximum you could have expended for the revenues were $1,170,000, or excuse me, the expenditures were $1,170,000. So you could have roughly expended about $192,000 in lobbying activities, which is for local lobbying. That's a good chunk. Probably not going to really go into that range, but I wanted to provide this overview. Now these are the rules for the organization, for the funds of the organization and how you expend those funds. For the individual members, for what you do personally, if you want to personally support a measure and personally go out and put a yard sign, you can do all that stuff to your heart's content. It's political activity. It's the highest form of protected speech in our country. So feel free to do all those sorts of things. Our concern here at the RTFH corporate level is the expenditure of our entity's assets, consistent with our charitable purpose, in such a way that we don't endanger the tax exemption. It's very rare, frankly, for the IRS to yank anyone's tax exemption, so I think that the likelihood of that happening, even if you get close to the 20% or go above the 5%, is remote, but we need to be aware of these activities and kind of these restrictions. So that's kind of my brief overview before Karen takes it away with her staff report, but I'm here if there are questions associated with any of what I've said.
John, if you have a question.
I have two questions. One is staff time, the value of staff time part of that 5%?
Yes.
And two is if a board is not spending money and we're not being paid, can we endorse measures?
Yes. So you could actually, as a board, formally adopt a resolution. We, the board of the RTFH, endorse Measure B because it furthers the charitable purpose of our organization to end homelessness in San Diego. We support the sales tax increase, whatever it is, certainly.
If John was fully aware of our fiscal condition, he wouldn't worry about us exceeding.
I'm just giving the overview.
I can tell you that I can assure you there is no danger that we will be over any of those limits. Okay, Karen.
Thank you, John. It's very, very, very helpful having you. Truly, without you, I don't think we could move forward on this one. Just to give you all a little history, the ad hoc committee for the merger task force did recommend that the regional task force do something around sustainable funding. Exactly what was pretty vague. And then at the last board meeting, we had a vigorous discussion. Thank you, Greg. And it was clear there was some appetite to do something. It was also clear that people were concerned about our 501c3 status. Also, the strategies is a very strategic thing to do to put a ballot measure, it costs a lot of money, and you want to make sure that you don't have opposition, et cetera, et cetera. I'm learning more and more about it, but I'm not the expert. So given that, I did try to figure out what I thought was the best thing for the regional task force to do, and the your action information report is kind of what I came up with. It's to ask our CEO to appoint a board member or members to represent the regional task force to one or all the groups that would listen to us that are thinking about a ballot measure, and to educate and discuss what would really be a meaningful ballot measure to help homelessness. This person would not represent the board and be able to state whether we will support or not support the ballot measure. But what they could do is do the advocacy and the education to make sure that homeless people's needs and requirements are represented there. So it's a fairly lengthy recommendation because I just really wanted to put all the details in. Maybe it makes sense for me to read it. Okay. To appoint an RTFH governance board member to represent the regional task force mission and position to stakeholders working on ballot measures or other legislative options that may provide funding to end homelessness or provide affordable housing. This person will engage and educate stakeholders on the funding and services essential to end homelessness and explore legislative options, including but not limited to a sales or parcel tax for all individuals and families throughout San Diego City and County. The representative will not have authority to decide whether the regional task force will endorse a ballot measure. He or she will report back to the governance board on his or her efforts, on whether he or she recommends that the regional task force support a specific ballot measure, measures, or other legislative effort. Under no circumstances will the representative, regional task force staff, or any other person representing the regional task force engage in lobbying or other political activities inconsistent with its 501c3 tax exemption or applicable law. And finally, no funds will be provided for this appointment. If funds are required, the regional task force CEO, the executive committee, or the governance board may allocate them. So we are not, with this measure, at all at risk of our 501c3 tax exemption. And the other thing that's nice about this is it really puts the burden on the board and that our staff is really, really busy. So I think we have an appetite to do this, we need to take it on. And clearly the other thing I would say is it does require a volunteer. I will not be volunteering, so it does require a volunteer to step up to do that. And we'll just ask Gordon to figure that out. I guess I would encourage, if we pass this, I would encourage you all to talk to him if you're interested.
John?
Is there a reason why we're not just creating a subcommittee, like an advocacy or education subcommittee, rather than just having one person do this?
The concern was really the staffing for the committee.
It doesn't have to necessarily, even what Karen suggests, I don't think it has to be one person.
It could be,
It could
yes.
be, it could be more than one person if there's interested, several members that want to do this. Okay.
We could change this to do that. If you want to make up.
Now, there's no staffing and no funding for it. I want to be clear about that, John. You're not spending any money. But if you have an interest, and really what this is to help liaison this board with whatever is developing out there. I mean, there's talk from a number of different sectors. And I see at some point this coalescing into something, and at least we would have, a representative or representatives that would be attached and report back to this board.
So I would just suggest the wording is something like to appoint a board member or members. I think that would be clean.
Okay. So, and if you have an interest, please connect with Gordon and share that enthusiasm.
I can also add, I did talk with Steve Russell, who spoke earlier from the San Diego Housing Federation, and he is absolutely willing to have our appointee be part of his discussions. There are I know of only 3 other groups, that's plenty, 3 other groups, and they are too early. So if things really coalesce, our appointee would also hopefully be talking with them.
Okay,
I guess we need a motion.
we do.
Oh, I can make
So is this motion then we're going to also adjust the legislative and policy activities policy to remove the language that is RTFH staff, that it becomes board member volunteer? Because my read of the existing policy says that it's RTFH staff that does that level of work.
Well, that is really a good nuance that you found.
It could be combined.
Is it really, Melissa, does it really say
I
so?
don't know
You
that
have to be
there's
a
anything that
member?
precludes us from doing this. though.
Yeah, you don't, it's okay, you don't have to have them all memorized. Well, I just asked Melissa, because she wrote all the processes and procedures, and she actually has most of them memorized, but,
Is there something that would specifically preclude us from having volunteers?
we're not sure. Sure. Oh, it's in this
Well,
policy.
what do we s-
It's in here. Okay. Do you know exactly what change we have to make? So we have to make this change first.
The legislation and policy analysis just reads that, so it'll be RTFH staff that will review and sign.
Oh, see, I don't think this is an issue, because this is just saying that the staff will review and analyze, I did read this, will review and analyze the legislation. So after the appointee comes back and says, this is what we're gonna do, we would be looking to Gordon and his staff to be working with the appointee and say, yes, I agree with you, no, I don't.
So the board takes the lead for the staff to then respond to, as opposed to the staff taking the lead for the board to respond to.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay?
So I'll make the motion.
Okay, there's a motion. The recommendations as enunciated by Karen. Right, who's second? Okay. Any further questions?
And I think we ought to just take Joel's as a friendly amendment, which I'll accept.
Okay.
I have a quick question. Is it clear that the adopted community plan should be the guidelines that the representative should use in these negotiations?
Actually, what we put was to represent the regional task force mission and position to stakeholders.
And that would be the adopted position of the task force.
Okay. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Everybody's behaving today. Good. Okay, that's approved. And that brings us then to item number 6, informational items, the first of which is Vice Chairman Ward, an update on city activities.
Thank you, Chair Roberts. And I do have a number of updates, and I think this is why we wanted to pull it out into an information item that will also kind of parlay into our item 6B on the FA discussion. First, I want to acknowledge a couple of key city officials that have just been working double overtime over the last month on all things from our perspective. Our Assistant Chief Operating Officer, Stacy Lomedico, is here. She'll be addressing us in item 6B. The Mayor's Senior Advisor on Homelessness, Jonathan Herrera, is with us and continues in that role. And then Deputy City Attorney Amanda Guy also has been instrumental in some of the work that my committee has been active on. I wanted to take 30 seconds. I know Jonathan also wanted to use this opportunity as well to pass out an information sheet that I think really best summarizes the efforts of the mayor and the city as of recent. Jonathan, did you want to distribute that and talk to that briefly?
Yes, we made copies available in the back, and then I believe Pam did pass around copies to all members of the board. But I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share that fact sheet here. It really does an excellent job of outlining some of the immediate action steps the administration, as well as in partnership with City Council and our service providers, are taking to address this crisis. It really kind of falls into 5 specific areas: fostering the creation of additional affordable housing units, as well as housing for low-income and homeless San Diegans, optimizing homeless program administration and outcomes, improving the city's homeless information infrastructure, identifying short-term solutions to provide for the immediate needs of the city's unsheltered population, and effectively facilitating the county's response to the hepatitis A outbreak. So I really encourage each of you guys to take an opportunity to review that. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And Councilmember Ward, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herrera, and I think this fact sheet is certainly a great starting point. There's a lot more that the city is working on, but we get the question often, what is going on, what are we doing? And I think that you all can appreciate from these 5.5 pages of description that there is a lot that's been underway. So stay tuned for more. Another piece of good news, Supervisor Roberts and I had the opportunity last Tuesday to attend a Padres game where we were trying to engage many interested persons in the private sector to be able to support the work of the RTFH, and I was very grateful. We were able to raise over $45,000 in commitments, and I think most of that has been received to date to support our community plan implementation phase 2 efforts, as well as some of the other, I think, minor holes in our adopted budget, so that was a huge effort. I'll take this opportunity to give a shout out again to Sequan for being able to provide use to their box, as well as donors from Sempra, Lennar, Regency Centers, GAFCON, Cox, AMR, the Atlantis Group, Zephyr, Heinz Organization, UCSD, Qualcomm, Geo Group, Lowe's Enterprises, Southwest Strategies, California Strategies, Presidio Affairs Group, and I might have missed a few others, but I think as you can see, we're really trying to engage the private sector in the work that you all and we all are doing here together to know what the RTFH does, to know what our community plan is all about, and to make some of those investments, and we know that there's more where that came from. So this is just a start, but we had a really successful event on Tuesday night, and I think it's going to help us a lot with our budgetary purposes. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the work you did on that, Chris. And the Padres won.
And they did. They had a winning night.
I mean, they should invite us back more often.
Got a few more announcements too, Mr. Chair. Turning to the Select Committee on the Homelessness. Last week we had our most recent committee meeting. I think there were 3 really key outcomes from that to share with this group. We did vote unanimously to declare and update our shelter crisis in response to the hepatitis A crisis. We currently have in the city of San Diego a shelter crisis declaration. We've actually renewed it twice in the last 3 years, and this will be advanced to the full city council, I believe, for the week of October 3rd for immediate action. Having a shelter crisis declaration in a local jurisdiction allows us to access state codes, which just helps us to suspend reasonably regulations, red tape, local ordinances that otherwise are hampering our abilities to be able to produce emergency, any kinds of housing or service opportunities in order to be able to respond to the state of affairs around homelessness. So I know there's been some narrative out there wondering why aren't we acting on a state of emergency. We are. That's underway, and to the extent that we can use any powers that this affords us to be able to do more faster at the city, I know we will. We heard earlier about the announcement of 3 new temporary structures for bridge housing. In addition to the location at Father Joseph 14th and Commercial, we are looking at an opportunity site at 16th and Newton, where the former winter shelter tent used to reside at sort of that interface between Barrio Logan and downtown, as well as in the Midway District to be operated by Veterans Village of San Diego. So I've been advocating on my own, from my kind of own perspective, that I know we need to have certain structures or parts of these structures dedicated for seniors, women with children, couples, some of the specialty subpopulations that have found it particularly challenging historically in some of our emergency shelter situations. So again, we want to keep these consistent with community plan, bridge housing principles, and we intend to have participants in this opportunity be on that pathway, on that pipeline to permanent supportive housing, many of whom we hope will have a voucher in hand. Lastly, we updated 0-51, the comprehensive homeless policy, to the full city council. It was last updated in 1995, so about a generation ago, and I think everybody at the board can appreciate how our best practices and our perspectives on policy and how we address homelessness has radically changed in the last 27 years. So the city council's policy will be consistent with much of the work that we're doing here at the RTFH. Lastly, we have a brief report on a rapid housing effort. Many of you might be hearing about this for the first time, but we are particularly excited to be partnering with just about everybody in the community on an action that we can do locally here in honor of National Housing America Month. I'm going to ask Chris Coons, who is the committee consultant, to come up for a quick program overview, but while he's doing that, to introduce that, we're generally looking to take 100 people off of the streets in about 3 days' time. Through this effort and through this partnership with city, county, housing commission, and service providers, we really intend not only to achieve just that, and that would be a good thing in and of itself if we could get 100 people off of the downtown streets, but through that experience, what are some of these critical roadblocks? Where are the gaps? Where are the lessons learned that are failures in our own system that we can then in turn quickly fix? Report back to all necessary entities and agencies, and then house the next 100 people. So this 3-day effort, I think, is really going to be enlightening. It's going to be scheduled for the middle week of October, and I'm going to let Chris take it over from here about the more the full range of explanation and efforts that we're trying to achieve here.
Okay, thank you. So Councilmember Ward gave a pretty broad overview of what we're trying to do. You can see it on the PowerPoint in red. We're obviously talking a lot about temporary and immediate solutions right now in San Diego, and that's rightly so. But I think we also need to, as we do these things, continue to place a strong emphasis on housing people and doing that quickly. So we're going to be doing this effort started in August, and like Councilmember Ward said, we're hoping to start moving people in. He said mid-October. We want to start now. So
even better.
Even better. All right. Let's go through it. I think one thing is that I want to make sure is that some of us have been involved in Blitz weeks, registry weeks in the past. This is not that. So don't think we're going to be doing the same thing we did 5-6 years ago. We've come a long way since then. We have a coordinated entry system. We have a lot of things that we didn't have, in the past. So this effort is going to utilize our existing resources that we already have. We're going to use our coordinated entry system. And I think one of the key things that we want to do is a lot of folks, around these tables complain about the lack of housing in our community, actually units to move into, and that's fair. Yes, that's definitely fair. But I think what we want to do is start really trying to be aggressive with tracking down those units and matching people really quickly, not just to that rental assistance program, whether that's a voucher or rapid rehousing or something like that, but actually to that unit. And it has to be done quick. Units are flying off the shelf in our community, in a matter of hours. I already went over this. Go ahead and skip this slide. All right, this one's hard to see, so I did update the PowerPoint, so if you guys are looking at the ones in your packet, it's a little different. Sorry about that. But let's talk about target populations here that we want to really focus on for this effort. In the red up there, this is kind of a hard-to-read grid, but right now we got a lot of households in our communities, both individuals and families, who actually have some type of voucher, have some type of rental assistance. They're in a program, they're just searching for a unit, all right? So if we want to house people quickly, that's your low-hanging fruit, right? If we can get those people through, that starts to speed up the flow with other things. So as you go down, we also have a group of people that they've gotten assessed, they've done everything, they've gotten their documents together, and now they're waiting for that actual rental assistance, voucher or rapid rehousing rental assistance. They will still need a unit too, though. And then kind of going down, we have a lot of people in our community that we've assessed, and they are just kind of hanging right now. They're not connected to anything. All right, so those are really the populations we want to focus on. So let's talk about those people with a voucher or some type of rental assistance in hand, but no unit. Just yesterday, or it was Tuesday, we had a meeting, and it was just among about 6 or 7 providers that we asked to come ready, like, hey, how many people do you have in that meets this kind of criteria? We had 233 households. That's both families and single adults. We had 86 households that are in some type of supportive housing program but don't have a unit. They have a voucher. And then we had 147 households that were in a rapid rehousing program that didn't have a unit. And again, this is 233 households. That's only among a small group of providers that are participating in this. So I guarantee there are a lot more. So one thing, matching to units. So we tried this on Tuesday, and the Housing Commission has done a great job through their landlord engagement effort to track down and get landlords to commit units. And so they roughly have a pool of about 160 units that landlords have, kind of agreed to rent to people experiencing homelessness. These range from 1 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms to a bedroom in someone's house with a shared, restroom. And so we actually did we asked providers to come with their list of people looking for units, and the Housing Commission went through, we call it like the hot list of units. Hey, this landlord says, call them today, they will rent to you. Okay, and we actually said, hey, who wants this unit? And we had VDSD, we had PATH, we had Father Joe's, people like, we'll take that one, we'll take that one. Yeah, we want that one. And so we did some really quick follow-up after that, and we're actually, people are going to see landlords later this week, tomorrow actually, which is great. Go ahead. So part of this effort, we also want to do move-in kits. So I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but our basic move-in kit that we want to fund through this, the basic is $350. That gets you the pots, the pans, the soap, the toilet paper. A little bit more of expensive move-in kit will include furniture, that's beds, desks, lamps, etc. So let's talk about, again, we want to target the people who have those vouchers in hand, because those are the easy ones, right? They've already made it through the system. They're just at the end. But let's talk about those people who are, we say match ready in our system. So we have 70 people, 70 adults right now in the city of San Diego who scored pretty high on the vulnerability, the SPDAT, who meet the chronic homelessness definition, and they've done everything we've asked them to do to get their IDs and Social Security cards, and they're just sitting there. They're hanging out, waiting. All right, so we want to start working with those folks. How do we figure out how to get those people to that next stage? We do have some unutilized permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing resources in our community, so we're trying to figure out how do we best meet those things. And we're going to want to start talking about how we can make some really good targeted referrals to those programs. And then the last group I want to talk about is that those people that we got assessed somewhere in the city and who are just kind of hanging out now. They're waiting, right? So we were looking at it, and we have 32 households, right, that scored extremely high on the VI SPDAT. So 24 are single adults, 6 are age 60 and above, 5 are families, and 3 are individuals aged 18 to 24. Right? So we want to start figuring out, that's only 32. If we expand the list of, kind of go down the VI SPDAT, we're going to get a much bigger pool. But hey, let's start with those 32 people and find them first. And so we need to start coordinating our outreach to go find those folks and start moving them from that, just having their assessment done, through the process. That's it.
Great, thank you, Chris. Does anybody have, back to you, Mr. Chair, if anybody has any questions about this item or anything that I described?
John?
We brought this up at a previous meeting that you were at, but I just wanted to bring it up again. Could you just address the support that is going to occur with these folks, especially since they're, highly vulnerable?
Yep. So again, we're not doing anything different. We're using our existing rapid rehousing programs and our existing permanent supportive housing programs. So all of those programs have ongoing support as part of the model. Obviously, supportive housing is more long-term, indefinite, right? And it should be pretty intense, right? Rapid rehousing, the model is a little bit shorter, but and the services are really catered to the person. So it's definitely not let's place people in housing and say adios. It is put people in housing and provide the right amount of support afterwards.
So I think, I love this program. I think it's great. I think that many of us have known for a long time that the process of handing a voucher or some resources to a person and then saying, go find a house is not working. It's absolutely not working in our community because they just come back and say, I don't know where one is. And the housing navigator has worked really hard to get all the documentation in place and then it just falls. So can you just tell me, because I'm a data person, what kind of data are you going to collect about, do we need to, how much intensity of service do you need to do that connection? And is it at the level of the provider, or are you walking people around visiting houses?
Yeah, I'd say yes and yes. So, yes, I think we do need to be, there needs to be a lot more hand-holding of actually taking folks out and taking them to
Showing them the unit?
Yes,
and all?
absolutely. I think it's also, there's a lot of intensity on, the Housing Commission, who's the one kind of doing that landlord engagement right now, to actually go out and, the landlord, Mike Berry with the Housing Commission, he said he's literally knocking on doors in neighborhoods. And so I think that's also a time-intensive process.
Those are, right.
to get landlords to, engage and be able to commit units.
It'll be interesting to know how much and what type of service the family needs or the individual needs to manage to get the resources that that you've given them to be functional. Okay.
First of all, I want to thank the councilman for all the positive activity, and specifically on the one item you mentioned, the relaxing of the declaration of emergencies and how that relaxes certain restrictions. Now, you mentioned as it relates to temporary shelters like emergency shelters, how does that impact more permanent type of units, such as what we propose to do at Father Joe's Villages?
So we're working with our city attorney to see the full range of options and what is within the purview of the city to be able to, again, suspend, authorize, et cetera, via the state's code on a shelter crisis declaration.
Right, okay. I'm interested in that.
We'll stay in touch.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else?
Just quickly, I really love this initiative too, and the energy and the innovation is incredible, and to see folks matched right at the pressure points that are most painful for people, trying to get the units and bringing everyone together. I have seen also a lot of energy as it relates to the subsidies, the incentives for landlords, and I just wondered, I didn't hear you talk about that, I just wondered how many doors are being opened because of that, and what if that's changing the dynamic at all. Because from my perspective, working with folks, it's great to have region-wide incentives, and I think they're very powerful, but I just wanted to know if that's true in the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I'm looking at Melissa, you want to talk about the incentives?
I'll try. So the Housing Commission in our landlord incentive program will offer $500 to the first homeless individual landlord houses in one of their units, and $250 for every subsequent unit. They also have access to our contingency fund, which has upwards of $1 million in it. That's to cover loss or damage to the unit above and beyond the security deposit. We cover the security deposit, application fees, credit assistance fees, utility deposits. It's a pretty flexible pool of funding, and then, as Chris mentioned, we have staff that's available 24 hours to respond to landlord needs. And so in our recruitment efforts so far, we've recruited close to 430 landlords, and 42% of those are brand new, and meaning the Housing Commission has never utilized them before. That isn't to say they haven't housed a homeless person before, but they were new, and that's from even counting landlords who've housed a Section 8 household before. So I think that it is bringing in units that we wouldn't otherwise have seen.
This sounds just like a great project, and I think you'll learn a lot, so excellent job. I'm wondering if you're thinking about how to expand this to the rest of our county and the other cities. I suspect if you do learn a lot, find some pressure points, other cities will be very interested, and I'm sure the county as well.
Good timing. So Karen and Supervisor, Council Member, the County of San Diego also has a landlord incentive program. It's structured in a similar fashion, similar funding for the first property and then additional. So maybe at the next meeting we could offer a report on how the county's system is structured.
Chris, I'm curious to know, how do you guys plan to track those that you've housed? And what sort of standard?
Help us by using the microphone if you would.
Yeah, how do you plan to track those individuals that are housed, and what sort of method or definition will you use to determine success?
You know, good question. We want to track it through our coordinated entry system right now, so there's a way to do that. I would say success for this initiative is really trying to figure out, because you guys are doing a good job of housing people right now, right? And we don't want to take credit for the good work that's already being done. And so, you know, I think really looking at people that are getting matched through this process and getting matched to the units that the city's identifying is kind of how we want to think about, you know, success for this. Again, it was really exciting to be in that meeting on Tuesday and saying, you know, and actually putting up units. We went through a handful of units and you know, the commission kind of, here's the rent, here's the bedrooms, here's kind of the behind the scenes information that, you know, about this landlord. And it was really cool to see providers, right, hey, we're jumping at these things. So I think that's, we want to count those as success. And hopefully by next month we'll be able to come back and say, you know, here's how it worked. But I also think it's a good opportunity to say, you know, here's how it kind of didn't work well, and here's how we can learn from this. And kind of what Karen's saying is, how do we take something like this, not an initiative, right? We have 2 initiatives here in San Diego, but you know, an effort that we can then kind of learn from and continue to get better.
I think layering onto that, Chris, I mean, I don't see it as an initiative, right? I see it as a way to take something like the community plan, which is about bringing resources together in a cohesive way and using it to get people off the streets and into housing. So I think it really syncs up nicely with that. And I'm excited about how it can be a model for the rest of the county as well. Because it utilizes existing resources. It's much more sustainable in that way.
Okay, is there any emphasis on no longer tearing down 1,000+ low-income housing units a year via Civic San Diego Downtown Partnership Clean and Safe?
John, that's not a part of this program's goal. It's about improving on the systems that we have to match people with existing housing.
Okay. Chris, thank you. Good report. I think there are things we'll learn, and I hope both the positives and any mild negatives you come back and share with us too, so we can get it right and we keep going. Okay, that completes item 6A. We're going to go to item 6B. We have 2 speakers here. Dr. Sayon, who has been here before. I refer to Dr. Sayon because his last name, okay, I'll try it. Hello, Pavan, right? And Stacy DeMedico is here representing the city. They're going to give us a report on the efforts that are ongoing on HEPA. Thank you both for being here and more importantly for the work you've been doing.
Thank you, Supervisor, and thank you all for having us back. We really appreciate within the last month since we last formally talked about this that there's been amazing, tremendous energy, just collective energy around this topic and addressing it. There was, of course, previous energy, and we've seen that enhance, and we're thankful for that. So I'm just here to give a brief update on what's happened in the last month. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the slide that you saw last month, but now populated with the most recent case data. You see that we are, when we count all hepatitis A cases for this year, including the travel-related cases, the kind of the background or the normal amount of volume of cases that we typically get in the prior years, we're up to 464 cases of hepatitis A, which is, as you see when you look left, it's, you know, we're up at 1998 levels. Okay, next slide. I presented this last month as well, but it's updated that we're still the second largest hepatitis A outbreak in the country since the 1995 when the vaccine was introduced. I do want to point out that it continues to still be primarily spread by that close person-to-person contact, and we know that, and many of the populations that we are here talking about today are very vulnerable and live in some unsanitary conditions which help unfortunately propagate that hepatitis A and the spread of it, which is why we're addressing the sanitary side of it as well. And then I did want to also point out that it's not foodborne, as you see that the first one or the third one or the fifth one listed there are, and it's also not in our public water supply. Chlorination kills hepatitis. I've been asked that a few times. I just wanted to clarify that. Next slide. And so the updated numbers is that we're up to 444 confirmed outbreak cases and still have about a 70% hospitalization rate and 16 deaths. So we have a little bit over 2/3 male, and we still have an age range, similar age range as last month, which is the 5 to 87. That 1 5-year-old is an outlier, and that is because that's a 5-year-old in a family that did not believe in vaccines and didn't get the routine recommended immunization at 1-year-old. Then when we look at the breakdown of the cases, we still have a similar proportion as we did last month, which is 34% are homeless and drug using, 17% are homeless only, 13% are drug using only, and that's again IV and non-IV. And then we have 24% neither and 13% unknown. So I did want to highlight again that almost a quarter of these cases are neither homeless and nor drug-using individuals, and many of these individuals are the folks who work closely with homeless and drug-using. So again, for many of you who are from the providers, the agencies, please, critical reminder to get your staff vaccinated if they're not already. Next slide. We continue to see that a lot of individuals with hepatitis C are coming down with hepatitis A, and that makes sense that because they already have one insult to their liver and then they're getting another with hepatitis A. So they're probably more likely to seek medical attention because they'll probably more likely have a severe reaction to getting hepatitis A. And then not included in the outbreak is the 26 travel-related cases that we've had in the same time period, and 44 cases were under investigation. We have been working with the CDC very closely, and we've got we're purchasing lab equipment, and we've gotten their the knowledge basically that we have to learn, train, and it takes several weeks to do that, go through that process and validate our lab, but we're bringing that process in-house, and that should be over the next 5 to 6 weeks. They'll allow us to turn around and confirm these cases quicker. And we continue to see that cases are linked genetically in other California counties and also Utah, Arizona, and Colorado. Next slide. This is the updated epidemiology curve, and we recognized the outbreak in early March and put out our first health alert to providers on March 10th after talking to the CDC and actually enhancing the recommendations. We made a local recommendations that homeless individuals also get vaccinated because that is not in the standard CDC recommendations. So that was back in early March, and of course we've been working with you all since then, and you see that the bars, the height of the bars are relatively unchanged if you were to just trend it in your mind. The very end of it may look like it's going down, but again, it's not. That's false, just because that's just reporting delays. Okay, so we have no indication that this is going down, unfortunately, but it is. We think it's about staying the same. And then this slide is an interesting one. This is the case counts by jurisdiction, and this is interesting because we're here as a regional task force, and we do want to emphasize that about 58% of the cases that we have locations for, and we don't have locations for all of them, and so of the cases that we can map and kind of pair up with a jurisdiction, we know that 58% of them are in the city of San Diego. That means the rest are not. So they are all around, and we have been meeting with the jurisdictions where there are more than 2 cases. Just to go and talk to the city managers, the deputy city managers, really make sure they're aware of the outbreak and collaborate and come up with creative ways that we can tackle that the outbreak in that area and prevent further cases from happening. Next slide. And so I think you might have seen this, or this was presented to the Board of Supervisors a couple weeks ago, a version of this. And so, there's been a lot of things that have been happening on the management of the outbreak side. And as you know, we've been activated in an incident command system on our end. We're continuing to work on working up the cases. We're continuing to work with environmental health. We're continuing to work with this 3-pronged approach, which is vaccinate, sanitize, and educate, which I'll talk about in a minute. And we're highlighting here some of our work with CDC. We met recently with HUD, and I understand, Gordon, you might be giving an update on the HUD efforts and the recent TA request. They were here in person last week, and they've given us some recommendations. And then, of course, we've been working with the city very collaboratively. We issued the directive on August 31st, and as mentioned, we declared a local health emergency on the 1st. Next slide. And so in terms of vaccination, we have vaccinated over 28,000 individuals across the county. And so of those, about 12,000, and the numbers are slightly updated than that. It's 874 have been given by county staff across field events, and then in jails and in our tuberculosis clinic and county psych hospital. Then we have another over 15,000 that have been given by our medical care systems, whether those are hospitals or federally qualified health centers or pharmacies. And then we have, of course, other vaccines that have been given just as a result of people being exposed to cases. So we continue to be creative. We continue to be working with hot teams, vaccinating in the emergency departments, which we've never done before this outbreak. And of course, vaccinating in substance use treatment providers, many of your agencies, in homeless service providers, and continuing to partner. Next slide. Sanitize. We are, as you've seen in the media and heard about, the city of San Diego has started sanitizing their streets, and Stacy will be talking about that. We have disinfection guidance for indoor areas. Our environmental health is actively including this guidance and the discussion about the outbreak every time they're inspecting a restaurant, and they've done over 6,000 of those since the beginning of this outbreak. And also, I would mention that many of the homeless service providers in the room, many of your agencies, that you all may have food handlers, and it's really important that at least a few of them or one of them, go through that food handler process that the Department of Environmental Health has, because they do have a training. And so if you need more information, just let us know. And then we have distributed over 3,600 hygiene kits. We have more available, so just let us know if you need some. And we placed 45 hand washing stations and have 96 public restrooms available in the city of San Diego. Next slide. This is just a picture of a hand washing station. I'm sure you've seen many. This is from the Union Tribune. Next slide. This is a picture of the city contractor sanitizing the street, not just cleaning the street. And we've been working with 211, and we're giving them the information on where the bathrooms are, where the hand washing stations are, and it's publicly available. There's this map that you can click on, and it's very interactive, so you can see exactly where they are. So that's a good visual, and you'll see that we're definitely starting to move outside of the city of San Diego too. You see the one in Oceanside and Escondido over there. Next slide. And in terms of education, we have had 8 news stories to date. We had a press conference earlier this week with Supervisor Roberts and Mayor Kevin Faulkner, and we've had 7 health alerts, and an 8th one if you include one about our immune globulin. And as I mentioned, we're continuing to partner with 211. We're getting a lot of these kind of general public questions, and they're putting it on their IVR, and we're equipping to a lot of the questions that they're getting as well. And I mentioned that we're meeting with the city leadership of jurisdictions that are outside of the city of San Diego, and we've been doing that. We're calling a meeting next week for all the cities across the county to talk about the outbreak. And so we're getting at every city, not just the ones that are affected, because we want to prevent it from getting into the cities where it's not already. And then this Tuesday we had, and Wednesday we had two different healthcare provider large efforts. We had a healthcare provider meeting, and Supervisor Roberts and the mayor kicked it off, and I think they made it very clear that we want to minimize the barriers and do what we need to do to address this outbreak. We haven't done this since Ebola was a concern, but frankly it was a concern back then, and we're living with the hepatitis A outbreak now. It's not just a concern. So the providers, I think we had over 80 providers show up from all the institutions. We shared best practices, and they benefited a lot from it. A lot of good ideas and discussion was had there. And then Wednesday, Supervisor Roberts and Mayor Faulkner and Dr. Nick talked to the board of the of the Hospital Association, and so they talked to the CEOs of the hospitals to drive home many of the points. And then we continue to give presentations across the county, and we're available if you need any for your organization. And we have a lot of resources on our webpage. If there's any types of resources that we don't have, just let us know. And if it makes sense and it helps you address this outbreak, we can try to create it. One that we're almost done with for you all, I was hoping to have it done, but we're not. But by tomorrow it should be done, is that we have a script that we've developed, and many thanks to Ellen in the audience, Ellen Burrell, for helping lead that, is that it's for homeless service providers to use at intake to talk about the outbreak and what to do depending on if you are having a vaccine clinic or not in the near future. So we will be distributing that across using this listserv after it's finalized. Okay, and that's everything. So thank you.
Okay, Stacy.
Good afternoon, Stacy Lomedico. I'm the Assistant Chief Operating Officer for the city, and like Melissa, I'm losing my voice. I do just want to say Dr. T and I talk daily, often more than once a day. We didn't get connected on the presentation. The 96 restrooms are actually targeted specific areas. Our regional parks, our downtown area, shoreline, and beaches. That doesn't represent all our public restrooms. We have, I think we have over 250. But these are the targeted areas, knowing where the population that the defined at risk are living. So to give you a little update on what the city's been doing, we've been working very closely with the county in terms of the three areas, which are vaccination, sanitation, and education. Vaccination, clearly the county is the lead. They reached out to us over the summer and wanted our assistance with our HOT team. We've been doing that consistently on a routine basis. Anytime that we're available and they're available, we'll do that. And we continue to do that in a variety of locations throughout the city of San Diego. In addition, we've been working with the county to identify county libraries, specifically Mission Valley and Downtown Library. Those have very large contingencies of the defined at-risk population that we're trying to reach out to. And we've expanded those to next month, or in September, next month we'll be doing Pacific Beach, Ocean Beach. I think we have one at City Heights as well. And we will begin, we being the city of San Diego, will also be using flyers to actually walk the areas, go to our parks and other locations to encourage individuals to go to those clinics that day that they're open. I've been working very closely with Dr. Wooten and Dr. T about reaching to the at-risk population. In addition to that, you may have heard about the AMR partnership with Downtown, AMR and the partnership with Downtown partnership, where we offered a free clinic today from 7 to 4 p.m. We posted flyers at our portable restrooms, as well as walked over into the East Village area, distributed flyers in English and Spanish, and asked assistance from the San Diego Housing Commission in getting the word out so that we could try to do that as well. We continue to explore additional ideas with Nick and his team about making sure that we're reaching the defined at-risk for vaccinations. In terms of sanitation, on August 23rd, we had been working with the county for several weeks on trying to get working on a sanitation procedure, and they were very helpful, their Department of Environmental Health, in giving us sanitary procedures. We received those and we immediately went through the process of working through those sanitation procedures to hire a contract. With the issuance of a public declaration of emergency on September 1st, that allowed us to utilize our emergency Muni code, meaning we do not have to go through our procurement process, which was extremely helpful in expediting that contract. So we received, we're working with Clean Harbor. Clean Harbor is the same company that cleans the city of LA and has been doing so since 2012. We entered into a contract with them and we have a routine procedures which we are doing Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We have zones, not sure if we have those on the 211 or not, but we have zones 1, 2, and 3. And we've done a complete cleaning starting September 11th. We will have a complete cleaning on Friday from Zone 3. And next week we'll be identifying additional areas throughout the city that we will be cleaning. We're finalizing that now and we hope to have that to the county on Friday, which is tomorrow. So we're continuing to do that. And a lot of people say, well, how do you know where to clean? Well, what we're doing is based upon the sanitary procedures and the health department and working with the doctor. Obviously this is fecal to mouth, so we want to make sure that we're cleaning up areas where there could be human feces. And we are using our co-compliance officers, our Get It Done data, and we're utilizing the data between that and actual on-site inspection, as well as individuals from the community who say we have a particular area that is not sanitary, and we'll be going out into those areas. We have not finalized how we want to do that. We want to make it a consistency. So, for example, we may do zones 1, 2, and 3, and then on Tuesday and Thursday, we may do council's office areas and communities on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But we will have a procedure set up so that we give that to the county. In terms of hand washing stations, we worked with the county to place hand washing stations by September 2nd. 40 were in place by the county and throughout the city of San Diego. An additional 21 were identified in the city to the county, and we're working closely with the county to have those installed by tomorrow. 2 of those sites were found, both the county and the city, when we started talking about it, realized that those 2 sites were not warranted, so there will be 19 installed. In terms of restrooms, we have in Balboa Park, 50% of our restrooms are open 24/7, and those were done, I think there was an additional 14. In addition to that, we've deployed additional portable restrooms along with security at each site. We have First and C that was deployed last Friday, 24/7 security, as well as 1330 G Street, which was deployed earlier this week, and we hope to have another 8 portable restrooms at 2 locations deployed in the East Village by Monday. Those will have full-time security as well. And working with the police department and others, we have found that if they're not secure, they can be a magnet for illegal activities such as drugs and prostitution, both of which do not stop the spread of the virus. We have shown that a large number of our at-risk population are using the restrooms at 13 and G and First and C. And in fact, we have signage being placed at 13 and G to ensure that they can see it from the street. In addition to that, we are also looking at education. Oh, I should also go back in terms of the restrooms downtown. More than 50% will be open 24/7. And we're working to make sure that we have an interactive map so that you can hover over each one and it'll show you the hours. And we'll be giving that to 211. We've been working very closely with 211. In addition to that, we in May notified our 11,000 vendors of the outbreak and provided them information as well as to all of our city employees. We did that again in August, and we did it again yesterday, that to our employees 3 times. And we hope to have all of our vendors notified of the disinfection, hand washing procedures that the county has on their webpage sent to all of our 11,000 vendors tomorrow. In addition, we're reaching out to our volunteers. We have a contingency of thousands to provide information from the county in terms of the outbreak. We're working with the county to ensure that it is the information that is consistent with what Dr. T and I talk about daily. In addition to education, we've put out posters and flyers back last month with the help of the county throughout our public offices, libraries, police substations, and park and rec community facilities, and we're going to be continuing to do that and update that. And with that, I would say that we are prepared to do this as long as it takes. For as long as it takes, we'll continue to evaluate the success of what we're doing and working with the county on that to see where we're at. And we're working on what does success look like and to measure that, and we will be working with the county on that. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you both. This is really a Herculean effort that is happening here. And it was mentioned that we were at meetings with representatives from virtually all the hospitals and then with the CEOs separately from all the hospitals. And everybody's on the same page. Everybody's thinking the same, and is the cooperation. I've never seen it any better on anything. And, we were concerned, do we have enough of the vaccine? We've checked, we're checking with, everybody that's using the vaccine so that we have a good handle on what's going on. A lot more has been ordered. There may be times when somebody makes an attempt to go to a particular location. If too many people flood a location, you might have a shortage, because this is a vaccine that has to be refrigerated, and it has a limited shelf life, so we can't order indefinite supplies. We have to be very careful in the way we do it. But without any question, all of the medical providers are in tune. We have, it wasn't mentioned, we have an army of public health nurses that are going out. I mean, literally an army. All due respect, the Salvation Army. We have our own army, and it's been augmented. We've signed contracts with three different private organizations to supplement the number of public health nurses that we have. And we have also put in a request with all of the CEOs at the hospitals, at any of their staff that are available. Now, the nurses are going into areas that are remote in some cases, and they're going with police protection, and they're going with social workers. Anyone that imagines that they just go out and they, go out and get vaccinations, you probably need to go on a field trip, because not everybody wants to be vaccinated. Okay, you have to build up a trust. You have to get people to agree to do as many vaccinations that has been done in such a short period of time is really a major effort. So kudos to them. This morning we had a presentation at MTS, the Metropolitan Transit System, on their efforts and what they are doing to sanitize the buses and the trolleys and everything else. We have expanded the people in the primary group for the vaccination, not only include the homeless, but with an emphasis on people, anybody that's providing services. We put the food handlers in there. We put the emergency first responders in there. So it's a larger group than what we were looking at probably a couple of weeks ago, which means we're going to have to get more vaccinations out. And we're doing that, but again, we're getting very good cooperation, and we're going beyond that. The Public Health Department has been putting out information even to the restaurants on how to intensely clean and sanitize the restrooms that are being used. And I tell you from experience, where some of these that are close to places where homeless congregate needed more instruction, and they're getting it. The cooperation with the city has been fantastic. This morning, Mayor Salas from Chile Vista also had a lot of positive things to say about the help that she's receiving from our county medical team and the way that the outreach is being done in her city. We're trying to get people to understand this is not just a City of San Diego issue, okay? In fact, I think if we go back to the start, it may have originated in El Cajon, we're not sure, but it appears that it did. And we need to work regionally on this, and I can assure you that we're getting the vaccine out. That is the #1 highest priority. yes, washing your hands is important. I'd recommend that. We are not recommending vaccine for everybody. Okay? Flu vaccine, yes. Hep A vaccine, no. If you feel, though, that you are in a group, all of your, for the agencies, any of you people that are working with the homes, absolutely get them vaccinated. And if there's anybody who feels that they have an issue, they should get vaccinated. At 211, you can find the locations of the convenient locations. These are being done free. They're being freely dispensed. We will keep doing that, but our emphasis is on a broader range of people than we were initially doing it. But and it was, without exception, all of the medical personnel from all of the hospitals. They were not recommending that everybody be vaccinated. We're working with the pharmacies, we're working with all of the places where vaccinations might be, just to make sure everybody is in sync and are doing the things. But it's the county offices where you can get free vaccinations for people who need those. We're going to get beyond this. I'll tell you that. We don't know where those charts are exactly right now because, as Dr. T tells us, there's a lag in the information system because of the incubation system, the incubation time that can be maybe up to 28 days and maybe up to longer in some instances, in the fact that the virus itself can linger in places. We've gone so far as to even connect with the construction workers who are building the light rail line, who are working in the riverbed because of the waste and fecal matter that's present down in that area. So, we're trying to get vaccinated. You don't know what you're stepping on and what you might be trying to get vaccinated. So we're trying to get that message out. If there is some kind of, contact, direct or indirect, we'd like to put a high priority on getting those people vaccinated. First of all, kudos to the city. They've opened a facility. In fact, there was somebody at the meeting today that already had been vaccinated there this morning. Must have opened early because they were at the meeting. Vaccinate, sanitize, and educate. Okay. We tend to be afraid of that which we don't understand. We have a lot of people on the sidelines who without medical degrees, that have an incredible amount of knowledge, at least in retrospect. And I don't mind that kinds of coaching, but we're looking at our professional staff to guide us in this emergency. I think we probably mentioned that, as of 2006, all of the kids are supposed to be vaccinated. Unfortunately, we had one that wasn't, but that's supposed to be routine. It's the rule now. So I don't know how old those kids are today, but so there's a reason why on our charts it's like from 26 up that it's been more prevalent, I guess would be the word. But the energy that's going into this is, we're gonna turn the corner here, and I'm anxious as we follow these numbers and the hopes that we see them coming down. It's expected this could go on for easily another 6 months in some form or another, even if we're tapering down, just because of the nature of, we looked at the curves on previous outbreaks, hepatitis, and our professionals have some deep understanding of this. So I can just assure you, we're working very closely with CDC, we're working very closely with HUD, Gordon will be telling you about that, and we're working with the state to ensure that we have the adequate supplies of everything that we need and the teams to deliver those supplies into the most remotest of areas here in San Diego, and not just in the city of San Diego, but countywide. So with that, Mr. Walker, you have a comment?
Yes, I'd like to bring everybody up to date on the HUD technical assistance. At the request of the county, we asked HUD to bring some technical assistance in. They visited with us last week. Some key things that and have developed a preliminary plan some key things that you need to be aware of as being a service provider. We'll be having actually several meetings, convenings. Look on your calendar for a meeting coming on October 4th from 1 to 3 p.m. We'd like everybody to be participating in that. There will be another service provider conference call, a choice of one of two calls this coming week, either on Monday or Wednesday that you'll look for. And we will continue to have these meetings and trainings among our service providers, because we're heavily involved in the sanitation end. We will not take on vaccinations, but we will do the sanitizing, and we need to make sure that all of our people, all of our service providers are in and involved. So that's those are really the key things. Look for that. We will be emailing you the meeting schedules as we have them, and there will be several ongoing. So, and before you end the meeting, I'd like to have something positive to say on this meeting. So please.
I'm not ready to end.
I understand that. I just wanted to make sure that we end on a positive note.
I look forward to your positive message. I do have one speaker's request from Michael McConnell.
Well, you can go after me, Gordon, because you'll need to fix it positive. But I do want to offer some really deep thanks to the local media who actually broke the story and raised the level of this crisis while our city and county leadership had their head in the sand. It was so crucial, and I want to thank the local and the national media who really raised the awareness on this when others weren't, and I'm sure that helped to save lives. I want to thank the other heroes in this, and that is the people on the street, the nurses, the police homeless outreach team, the providers who are doing what they can, all those people who want to do and save lives regardless of whether they get the support from the leadership. That is really impressive. We will move forward as a community no matter what. It's the leadership that needs to catch up with what the community wants to do. And it's not just on the hepatitis, it's just on homelessness in general too. So thanks again for all the people who are on the ground making this work, and the media for actually raising the level of awareness on this and actually doing the job of our elected leaders who should have been doing that much, much earlier on. I'm not going to harp on that. It's well documented where the ball has been dropped. There's 100 media stories out all across the country. I just got a call. There's more national media hitting the ground here tomorrow. Everybody's well aware of this crisis. It's spreading all around the country now, as we've heard, this strain of virus. Maybe some of that could have been stopped with earlier action. So, Gordon, you can top that. Go for it.
Thank you, Michael. With that, okay,
Just wanted to comment. First of all, thank you to the two of you and your positive efforts. I mean, it's just tremendous. I can't thank you enough. I do want to confirm one thing, as it relates to the public restrooms, the difficulty it is to manage these restrooms. We have Father Joe's Villages, as Stacy knows. We have a number of those restrooms within the public restrooms, and they're on the list that we manage. Just to give you a sense of what it takes, right? We're having to clean those restrooms every 2 hours, which had not been planned initially, every 2 hours, and yet that seems to not be enough. The activity that's happening, the illicit activity that happens within those restrooms is incredible. So much so that we put in some mitigating action in order to try to cut down on that. Just to give you a sense, we've cut down the stall doors, and now they're half doors, so that you can see within the stalls themselves. The next step is going to be for me to remove those doors, which I may be doing. And then we've ordered these gigantic commercial fans that will arrive within the next week or so that we're going to be installing, so that they can blow out any flames that are in there because of the illicit drug activity that occurs in there as well, or heroin and the like. And so in the hope that that will blow out the flames. I mean, despite the fact that they clean every 2 hours, my staff has to go in, my custodial staff has to go in and clean things off of the walls. I'll leave it to your imagination as to what's found on the walls. The toilets are backing up constantly because things are stuffed into the toilet, like shoes and clothing, for the sake of just to have them overflow. I mean, it's incredible to manage these bathrooms, and it's the same thing that this outside of our facility will be encountered as well. I've been sharing that with the media of late just this week, because you hear stories about, these restrooms, why aren't they being kept in a more humane way, right? And it's easy to be said, and people don't recognize the effort that goes along with that. And that's why I've been making it very clear with those who would listen on the media side. And there's been a lot of attention actually that's been paid as a result of that. So I just thought I'd share that with you so that you realize that, and I'm hoping the community as a whole realizes that. Thank you.
Thank you. Gordon?
You can definitely top that.
I'm not sure I want to top any of those. These are very serious issues. They are, and we need to treat them with the respect that they deserve. However, since I have been here, one of the things that we have been looking for is the opening up of the HMIS system. And we've been going through all the final last little deals. And so at the end of this board meeting, an email will be sent out to all of the users of HMIS. You've been notified that it's actually going to close down for maintenance this weekend. And the really reason for that is the system will open up. And so on Monday, this HMIS system will be open. So let's celebrate something today.
That's good. Okay. With that, I think we've covered everything on the agenda. I'm declare the meeting adjourned. The next meeting will be October 15th.
It wouldn't be a valid meeting if